The nation can't stop shooting at each other even for one entire weekend as we go in and look at two new shootings that cropped up over the weekend here. The West Coast remains on fire, and people talk about whether or not it was arson or what could have actually caused it. Paul Krugman has the worst take ever on 9/11, and this happened after Contemporary last week, so we'll talk about what happened there. And the NFL isn't woke enough for Colin Kaepernick. I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Contemporary. My name is Jay Edgar. They can't stop the war. They can't stop, they won't stop. And looks like we've got something that's actually pretty well breaking this morning, so we'll go over that first. Well, not before we go into stocks. We'll do the stocks, and we'll do the shout-outs and everything else here, but we're going to start off with what happened in Pennsylvania, go down to Compton, go to Oregon, and just see what is going on with all these protests, as we say, even though they're not peaceful anymore, or some people will shut YouTube channels down for saying that what happened in Oregon is a protest. But before we get started, head on over to freedomscoop.com. Freedomscoop.com is going to be your one-stop shop for all of your news and commentary needs. We carry great shows such as The Breakdown with Birkenhoff, The Daily Ignoramus, The Generational Gap, Where I Sat this past Friday because John had some extenuating life circumstances. I will leave it to him to see if he wants to tell you guys about that or not. We also carry the Freckles and Brit Show. They're about to drop a new episode. And the R-Rated Conservative. So come on over there and check us out. Pick up some of our swag and help us support great creators. All right, let's get into the stocks here and see what we've got going on with that. So starting off with the stock chart of the Dow Jones for the last week. Looks like it stayed in pretty positive territory on Friday, dropped a little bit throughout the middle of the day, and came back up in positive territory. Not much positive territory, about 0.5%, but positive territory is positive territory nonetheless. So that's what we saw up on the chart. Let's see what the investors have to say. From Investors Business Daily, Dow Jones futures rise, but stock market rally living on the edge. Nvidia, ARM, TikTok, Oracle deals, vaccine news and focus from Ed Carson. Dow Jones futures rose solidly Monday, along with the S&P 500 futures and NASDAQ futures amid several big merger deals and coronavirus vaccine news. The stock market rally is still in force, but it's living on the edge, following a second week of violent selling. I wonder how Steven Tyler feels about this. The NASDAQ composite ended last week below its 50-day moving average. Apple and Tesla stock among the market rally's big winners, especially in the final weeks. To the top, sold off hard, Shopify, DocuSign, and Microsoft are below their 50-day lines. The most important element of can slim investing is the M. If the market conditions are not favorable, most stocks will struggle. Without the M, it's can slim. You may be sly and a better man than I, but you're not smarter than the market. I actually don't know what that means. I'll have to look that off mic here, but I'm curious about that. I'm going to hold on to this particular edition of Investors Business Daily so I can look and see what can slim is. So here's what investors should do. Be decisive, have a correction game plan, and build a watch list of leading stocks such as Taiwan Semiconductor, PerkinElmer, Target, and Chipotle stock. Nvidia will acquire the wireless chip designer ARM Holdings from SoftBank for $40 billion. The UK-based ARM designed chips for Apple, Intel, Samsung, and more. An Nvidia ARM deal will likely face serious antitrust concerns, but Nvidia stock in SoftBank jumped in the pre-market. China's ByteDance reportedly has chosen Oracle as its partner for the U.S. operations of TikTok, though it apparently won't be structured as an outright sale. Earlier Sunday, Microsoft said Sunday that ByteDance had rejected its bid. ByteDance reportedly decided not to sell the algorithm that drives TikTok results. Oracle supposedly was still open to working with TikTok under that restriction. President Trump has threatened to ban TikTok from the U.S. by mid-September without a sale, though Americans likely could continue to use the service, most likely through a VPN. Oracle stock spiked on the news, while Microsoft partner Walmart edged lower. Walmart reportedly is still interested in investing in a TikTok Oracle deal. Yeah, just get on whatever it is that they can in order to make that money. because they're losing customers left and right when they go on their woke platform. Gilead Sciences will acquire Immunomedics for about $21 billion, or 88 cents, or dollars a share rather, and 108% premium. Immunomedics, I keep wanting to say immunodynamics. Immunomedics, which has a breast cancer drug, Trodelvy, closed Friday at 42.25. Gilead shares edged lower, while Immunomedics more than doubled. Yeah, keep treating the cancer and don't make any effort to cure it, because we'll make more money off the treatment than we will off the cure. Apple stock, Tesla, Chipotle, and Microsoft are on the IBD leaderboard. Taiwan Semiconductor stock is on the leaderboard watch list. Microsoft stock is on the IBD long-term leaders list. Microsoft, Nvidia, and Perkin-Elmer stock are on the IBD 50. So that's what we're going to see out of the Investors Business Daily. Let's see what CNBC has to say about this, and then we'll talk about the war zone. So no, I will not turn off my ad blocker, which sucks because I got an ad anyway. But from CNBC, Dow futures jump as Wall Street tries to recover from tech sell-off. Apple and Tesla rise. From Fred Imbert, U.S. stock futures rose early Monday after a sell-off in tech shares led to the market's first back-to-back weekly declines in months. Dow Jones Industrial Average futures added 219 points, or 0.8%. The move implied a gain of more than 170 points. At the open, the S&P 500 futures were up 1%. NASDAQ 100 futures were up more than 1.4% as tech shares rebounded in the pre-market trading. Here's what investors were watching. Shares of Apple were higher by 2% in pre-market trading. The market has been following in the footsteps of its rally leader. Apple shares are down 13% this month. Didn't they just do a big split though? So they honestly should be. I think the total should be about the same, but there's no universe where I would expect that Apple shares would stay up after they split it. What was it, 5-1 just a few days ago? Tesla shares rebounded more than 2% in pre-market trading. The once surging stock is down more than 25% in September after it failed to gain entry into the benchmark S&P 500, something investors were anticipating. And they also did a big split too, didn't they? Now, yes, not getting on the S&P was probably a big thing for them, especially with people that actually watch the stocks every day. But yeah, they also did a big split, so keep that in mind as we go forward. Tech sentiment was lifted by the news of Nvidia buying chipmaker ARM Holdings from SoftBank for $40 billion. Nvidia will finance the deal through a combination of cash and common stock. Nvidia was up 6% at the pre-market trading. Other chipmakers also gained, including AMD, Micron, and Skyworks. AstraZeneca resumed phase 3 trials for its coronavirus vaccine in the UK following a halt for safety concerns. So that vaccine is still coming from AstraZeneca. ByteDance rejected Microsoft's bid to buy TikTok's U.S. operations. Instead, ByteDance has chosen Oracle to be TikTok's U.S. technology partner, and Oracle will take a significant stake in the business, according to a person familiar with the discussions. Oracle shares were up 6% at the pre-market trading. One thing I want to point out before we go on with this one, Oracle, from what I understand, and I'm going to look this up to see if I can find what all Oracle owns, but Oracle owns a bunch of other tech stocks too. I know Sun Microsystems was on there, but they have a bunch of other big ones. So this may tread into antitrust territory as well. So this is something that we need to watch going forward on top of everything else. Gilead said it will acquire Immunomedics to expand its cancer treatments. It was a $21 billion cash deal. Immunomedics shares doubled in pre-market trading. Shares of Immunomedics surged more than 100% in pre-market trading Monday. The iShares NASDAQ Biotechnology ETF was up 2% in pre-market trading. So that's all the things that moved the market this week. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens after the markets open and who buys, who sells, and where we go from that. Let's get into the news and the war zone that we see across this country. Breaking, just about right now, actually. From the Philadelphia Inquirer archive, because they don't let you read it if you have an ad blocker, which I do. And I got rid of that shit in a hurry. Lancaster police fatally shoot man after domestic disturbance call. Unrest erupts in the city. This is from Julie Shaw and Aaron McCarthy. Police in Lancaster fatally shot a 27-year-old man, and officers in Reading critically injured another person in separate shootings Sunday, authorities said. In the hours after the Lancaster shooting, police used pepper spray to disperse protesters, some of whom were later arrested after they threw bricks through the glass doors of the city police station and the front of a nearby post office, according to news reports. The Lancaster Bureau of Police said about 4:15 p.m. an officer responded to a home in the 300 block of Laurel Street for a report of an in-progress domestic disturbance. A man who was reportedly armed with a knife was fatally shot by police. The Lancaster County District Attorney's Office, in a Sunday night news release, identified the man killed as Ricardo Munoz. He was pronounced dead at the scene. On Sunday night, a crowd that grew to about 400 protesters gathered outside the Lancaster police station, calling for justice and shouting, "Not one more," according to Lancaster Online. At first, the protesters were relatively peaceful, a Lancaster Online reporter said during a live broadcast. But as night turned to morning, the situation became more volatile as police fired what they said was a pepper spray into the crowd, according to news reports and a statement from the police department. And protesters then threw bricks into the police department, a post office, a county vehicle parked on the street. The police department defended their use of pepper spray in a statement, saying protesters locking arms was blocking an access ramp on the side of the station, and the group did not move after several requests by the officers. The department also noted that the property damage and the water bottles, glass bottles, rocks, bricks, gallon jugs of liquids, and part of a plastic road barricade that were thrown at police on the scene. Lancaster Police Chief Gerard Berkeheiser earlier said that the shooting was captured on an officer's body camera, and the officer has been placed on administrative leave per the department's policy, Lancaster Online reported. Any loss of life, regardless of how it happened, is devastating, Berkeheiser said. According to Lancaster Online, it's devastating for everyone involved. It's devastating for our police department, the families, and our communities. Late on Sunday night, possibly in response to the protesters outside, police released new details about the incident and also released the officer's body cam video. In a statement, they said that the 911 caller told a Lancaster County dispatcher that her brother, Munoz, was reportedly becoming aggressive with his mother and was attempting to break into her house. The video, which is graphic, shows a woman coming out of the house when the responding officer arrives outside. A man is heard shouting inside. The video then shows a man coming out of the house, then some blurred images, and the officer is then heard and seen firing his gun several times while the man is on the sidewalk. He then lies motionless face down on the sidewalk. Included in the video is a still image of the man with a knife in his hand before he was shot. Earlier Sunday night, the Lancaster County District Attorney's Office said in a tweet, "We have reviewed body cam footage which shows the man ran at Lancaster police while brandishing a knife above his head. Our investigation is ongoing." So, from everything we're seeing out of this, a man charged a police officer with a knife in his hand, and now they are still protesting. They will protest anything that has to do with an officer-involved shooting at this point. And we're going to see the flip side of this in just a couple articles here when we talk about what happened in Compton. And there's another one that I actually didn't include in the stack for the day because everything else is ongoing with this one. But, I mean, down in Tennessee, a guy went off and shot. I don't know who it was that he shot right offhand, but there was a deadly carjacking in Tennessee, and the guy was on the run. And they've got APBs out for this guy, too. Everywhere they've got an APB out for this guy, including two photos that were clearly of two different men. But yeah, they've got APBs out for this guy. And the first thing that I see people saying with this up is, "Oh, we're the protests because this guy shot a guy." Well, the protests aren't there because he hasn't had a standoff with police that has erupted in his death yet. Just wait, they'll find a way to protest this one too. So, yes, they are protesting or outside of Reading, Pennsylvania, or Lancaster Police Department. I'm sure that we'll see something more. I mean, we've got the BLM signs, we've got people shoulder to shoulder. potentially super spreading, the mask down, all the stuff. Another completely maskless person on this one. All the stuff of a good protest here. And we will see if this actually makes the news or not, because remember, this stuff is not good for Biden in the polls, and if it's not good for Biden in the polls, then they don't want to discuss it. Let's keep going here. From CNN, this was from last night. Shooting near Rutgers University leaves 2 dead and 6 injured from Elizabeth Joseph. 2 people died and 6 others were injured in an overnight shooting near Rutgers University in New Brunswick, New Jersey, authorities said. New Brunswick police responded at 1:18 a.m. Sunday to a Delafield Street address and found victims with gunshot wounds. The injured were taken to various hospitals in the area, and 2 male victims were pronounced dead at Robert Wood Johnson University Hospital, according to a statement by the Middlesex County Prosecutor's Office. Though the shooting took place near Rutgers, authorities said there was no evidence of a connection. Thus far, the investigation has determined that there is no affiliation with Rutgers University or its students, the prosecutor's office said in a statement. The investigation into the shooting is ongoing and being handled by the New Brunswick Police Department and the Middlesex County Prosecutor's Office. It's kind of funny to me to see this here because this is investigation is ongoing and we don't know what happened, or we're not going to tell you what happened. But it's under investigation and just wait for more investigators. But because of the officer-involved shooting, they're right there, they're releasing names, they're releasing details, even though that is also under investigation at the time. So it's interesting the difference between the two. In my eyes, anyway. You guys might not see it as interesting, but I definitely see it as interesting. So that happened in New Jersey. This one I guarantee is going to wind up getting swept under the rug. But I wanted to make sure that my audience at least was able to see it. Let's go to the big one here from Fox 11 Los Angeles. Autoplay. Shut that shit up. 2 deputies ambushed and shot in Compton. Posted 1 day ago. Oh, I suppose... this is a video only one. Okay, so we're not going to shut the video up. We're actually going to listen to this. Until Wojcicki shuts me down for listening to it anyway.
Director Anthony Scaramucci, LA Times political writer Seema Mehta, and Joel Pollack from Breitbart News. Plus, Chasten Buttigieg is with us, talking about being married to Pete, his emotional coming out story, and what's at stake in this election for the LGBTQ community. Then,
Trump pretended the coronavirus wouldn't come to our shores.
these California brothers dominating the internet are red for socialism.
About the questions not being asked of the president. So if you knew it...
Okay, this is not going to be what the article advertised it was. So, fuck that. At least I know that every other news outlet that I have covering parts of the story is going to tell us a little bit more about this. I apologize for the on-air production off of this, and we'll get rid of that shit. Alright, so we'll move on to ABC Eyewitness News from ABC 7 out of LA County. Ambush shooting in Compton leads to rowdy protest. LA reporter arrested after the scuffle. Video from outside the St. Francis Medical Center shows authorities trying to clear the area. At one point, a few people were seen blocking an emergency exit and an entrance to the hospital. One witness said some of the demonstrators even tried getting inside the building. They were saying death to the police, kill the police, and that they were using all types of curse words and derogatory terms about the police. Just provoking our police officers, says Bishop Juan Carlos Mendez. With churches in actions, it's unacceptable behavior because the hospital should be a sanctuary. We should leave hospitals alone. The sheriff's department tweeted that protesters were yelling, "We hope they die." Peaceful protesters. Peaceful, remember. They don't want anybody to get hurt. They're just peaceful protesters. LA County Sheriff's Office tweets to the protesters blocking the entrance and exits of the hospital room, yelling, "We hope they die," referring to 2 LA sheriffs ambushed today in Compton. Do not block emergency entries and exits to the hospital. People's lives are at stake when ambulances can't get through. That's usually a good rule of thumb for everything. And that, I remember, I'm old enough to remember because I'm more than 6 months old at this point, when the lockdowns were being protested in Michigan, and that was the same complaint that they used against the lockdown protesters. When they did the car protest in Lansing around the Capitol Square, and people said, well, they're blocking emergency vehicles from being able to get in or out of the hospital, and that's bad because they can't do that. Well, they're actually doing it here, and if I remember correctly, and let's just assume that I do at this point, there was an actual incident where an ambulance did try to get into Lansing Hospital, and the car protesters made a path for the ambulance to get in. I don't think that the LA County protesters are going to do the same. That's just my opinion. I don't know if that's true or not, but, just seeing everything else that we've seen over the past few weeks, couple months, whichever it is that you want to see it as, I don't think that's going to happen. Let's see what we have going on here. More on. Shortly afterward, a local radio reporter was also caught up in the chaos and was tackled to the ground and arrested by deputies outside the hospital. KPCC LAist reporter Josie Wang had been covering the earlier press conference. The department tweeted that she ignored commands to stay back as deputies tried to arrest someone else and did not identify herself as a member of the press. Wang was arrested for allegedly obstructing justice. Authorities say she didn't have proper credentials on her, but KPCC LAist have refuted that, saying that she was clearly wearing press credentials around her neck. Video taken by ABC7 shows at least 5 deputies pinning her to the ground before placing her in a patrol car. You know what? I don't feel sorry for her. You went down there knowing full well what could happen in the chaos. Just like when I went to Kenosha in the chaos. And I even did it throughout the day, during the day. And I still went down there with the full knowledge and intention that something could happen. That I could get arrested, tackled, tear gassed, pepper sprayed. You don't go into the belly of the beast without knowing that there are risks involved. You just don't do it. So if Wang is going to complain about the fact that she got arrested while going down into an active war zone, I have no sympathy for you. I have sympathy for you over the fact that, yes, you have the freedom of the press, but tensions are high, people are disguised. Just take the L and let your network take care of the legal costs for you. That's it. The news agency reports that Wang was taken to the women's jail at the Century Regional Detention Center and was later released without bail. Hours after her arrest, Wang tweeted that she was headed home and that she would share more about the incident after a little rest. According to KPCC newsroom executive, Wang had visible bruises and scrapes, a sore shoulder, and a blackened eye. Yeah, that may be a little bit excessive, but Wang posted a series of videos on Twitter recalling the incident, one showing 2 deputies damaging her phone by kicking it and stepping on it. In a statement, KPCC said the obstruction charge against her should be dropped. Yeah, probably. But tensions are high. Nobody knows who anybody is, and even with credentials, it's pretty easy to print off credentials. So they're not going to tell us what happened that started all of this, unfortunately, but yes, they are protesting outside the hospital, trying to get in and trying to make sure that these officers die. Let's move on to the Daily Wire. City manager of Linwood, near where LA deputies were shot, posts chickens come home to roost, from Hank Berrien. The city manager of California, which is near Compton, where 2 Los Angeles County deputies were ambushed and shot in the head Saturday night, posted a meme on Instagram about after the shooting with a picture of the 1960s black leader Malcolm X and the caption, "Chickens come home to roost." Yeah, that was probably not the right thing to say. Jose Ometotel, city manager of Linwood, also wrote in a post, which was deleted later, the fact that someone randomly opened fire on deputies is to be expected in the society we live in today. So that's the tweet. That's the picture right there from Instagram. The shooting of anyone is wholly unacceptable occurrence in society. I do not condone the type of violence seen in the shooting of the deputies yesterday in Compton. I will say that the communities like Compton have been plagued by gangs that inflict fear and violence in the community. All right, and now here is the report. The initial report off of this. Finally, after going through 2 articles. 2 deputies with the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department were hospitalized Saturday evening after a male gunman approached their patrol vehicle, fired multiple shots inside an ambush attack, and then fled on foot, according to officials and video surveillance. One of the deputies, a 31-year-old mother of a 6-year-old boy, and the other is a 24-year-old male, revealed Sheriff Alex Villanueva in a press conference Saturday evening. He did not disclose their condition. "This is just a somber reminder. It's a dangerous job," said Villanova. During the press conference, actions, words have consequences, and our job does not get any easier because people don't like law enforcement. On Sunday, the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department put up a 6-figure reward for information leading to the arrest and conviction of the man who ambushed and shot the 2 deputies. "We at the LA Sheriff's Department would like to offer our sincerest appreciation for the overwhelming support being offered from all over the nation. We also wish to thank the LA County Board of Supervisors for sponsoring the $100,000 reward for the arrest and conviction of this coward," the Sheriff's Department announced. Investigators have described the suspect as a black male who was wearing dark clothing at the time and appeared to be between 28 and 30 years old. Sheriff's Department Homicide Captain Kent Wagner said he could not draw further conclusions about the suspect's height and weight because the surveillance video that captured the shooting used fisheye camera lens, which he said can distort footage, and the appearance of the suspect, the Daily Wire noted. So, Saturday night, 2 cops sitting in their car just outside of Compton get essentially attempted execution-style shooting in the back of the head. Somebody just snuck up on them and shot. And we've seen this before. I believe it was Chicago a couple of years ago. The same thing happened. I think it was more than a couple of years ago because I think it was still during the Ferguson riots, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I think it was. It was during the Ferguson riots. Somebody just walked up to a car with a cop in it. Now that guy died, if I remember correctly. But somebody just walked up to him, point blank, shot him in the back of the head. So this is the point we're getting at. This is not a protest anymore. This is murder. What we saw with Rittenhouse was not murder. That was a defensive shooting. And we're going to talk about that shit a little bit later on too. I've got the CNN article from that up here. I teased it a little bit on Saturday when we did Ed Talk, but I've got the actual CNN article up here, and I'm going to rage and rant about that one. I'm telling you right now, that's going to be a full ranty moment when I read this one here. And then I'll have the video for the Red Net Show later on tonight as well. But this is no longer protests. This is no longer happy happenstance, violence by and by, the war against police. That was an outright walk-up killing. Or in this case, attempted killing. You've asked for the violence is coming to you. So, and they're rioting outside the hospital, trying to get in, trying to make sure these guys die. It's disgusting. On everything, on every metric of this is disgusting. Let's keep going here from CNN. 2 LA County deputies are out of surgery after ambush shooting in Compton, from Artemis Moshtagian and Amir Vera over at CNN. 2 Los Angeles County Sheriff's deputies who were shot and critically injured Saturday night are out of surgery, according to LA Sheriff's Department spokesperson. It looks like they're going to be able to recover, Sheriff Alex Villanova said on Sunday afternoon. "We'll see what the long-term impact is. We don't know that yet, but they survived the worst," Villanova said during a community dialogue event. The deputies, 1 male and 1 female, were ambushed as they sat in their vehicle, police said. Villanova said at a press conference Saturday night that the shooting in Compton was done in a cowardly fashion and that both deputies were being treated at St. Francis Medical Center in Linwood. Captain Kent Wagner said the shooting happened at 7 p.m. Wagner said the suspect approached from behind the deputy's vehicle and walked along the passenger side. He acted as if he was going to walk past the car, raised a pistol, and shot multiple times, hitting both deputies, Wagner said. Yeah, there's the still of it. I don't know if I can put video up of this. Well, even if I can't, I probably would anyway, because what's an age restriction here? Here and there. Video of the incident, tweeted by LASD, appears to show an individual in dark clothing walking up to the deputy's car, firing a gun into it, and running away. The two officers, a 31-year-old mother and a 24-year-old man, were taken to a local hospital and are both still fighting for their lives, LA Sheriff's Department said. Both deputies were sworn in 14 months ago, so they're relatively new to this job too, which makes this even worse. This is just a somber reminder that this is a dangerous job and actions and words have consequences. Our job does not get any easier because the people do not like law enforcement, Villanova said. It pisses me off. It dismays me at the same time. There's no pretty way to say it. The Sheriff's Department announced Sunday afternoon it is offering a $100,000 reward for information leading to the arrest and conviction of the suspect, who remains at large. As of Sunday, the metro station in Compton remains an active crime scene. You know what? I want to look into this to see if this is a possible way that a crowdfund site could do. I bet you the people of the internet could raise more than that for the reward. Now, I don't like the police any more than a lot of the people that are shooting at the police do. But I do think that more of my dislike of the police is rooted in the amount of laws that we have for victimless crimes. Do keep that in mind. I'm more against the laws than the people that are going out to try and enforce them. Because they're just trying to put bread on the table. They're just trying to put food into the bellies of their family. But these are also people. And this was an execution-style shooting. A cowardly execution-style shooting. I bet you that crowdfunding sites, if they were allowed to do so, could work up $1 million reward to get this guy into custody. And I bet you people would be willing to do that because they can look past the police officer side of the people that were shot and see the people, the mother, the fresh recruit. And then, of course, we start lobbying our politicians to get rid of some of the laws that put these people in danger. But let's keep going off with that. As of Sunday, Metro Station in Compton remains an active crime scene with dozens of law enforcement vehicles and police tape blocking access. Late Sunday morning, a tow truck was seen carrying away a Sheriff's Department SUV from the location of the shooting. The hospital where the two deputies are being treated remains under heavy police protection. Both President Trump and Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden condemned the shooting, which we'll talk about that just a bit later here because I've got the Daily Wire article for Biden. Speaking to a group of Latino supporters in Las Vegas on Sunday, Trump said, "When we find that person, we've got to get much faster with our courts and we've got to get much tougher with our sentencing." In a statement, Biden called the shooting absolutely unconscionable because that's the maximum number of words he can string together at a time. "Acts of lawlessness and violence directed against the police officers are unacceptable, outrageous, and entirely counterproductive to the pursuit of greater peace and justice in America, as are the actions of those who cheer such attacks on," the statement said. U.S. Representative Adam Schiff tweeted he was praying for the two deputies. Hold my tongue. Hold my tongue. Hold my tongue. All right, let's keep going. "Every day, law enforcement officers put themselves at risk to protect our communities." His tweet read, "I hope the perpetrator of this cowardly attack can be quickly brought to justice." And then we read about the reporter that got arrested. We read about that one already, and I've weighed in on this one. So, Biden, Schiff, bullshit. Bull fucking shit, both of you. Biden, your campaign staffers have been going out and putting money into bail funds to get people out of jail for protesting like this. What do you think they're going to do if they hate the police officers this much? That is an empty platitude coming from you, and I call fucking bullshit on what you're doing with all of that. And Schiff, abso-fucking-lutely the same. You guys are encouraging this hatred, this race war between the police, because you want to capitalize on the violence of this. But now you're making a platitudinous statement because you don't want to lose the police union vote. Fuck you both. That's what I have to say to that one. All right, let's keep going here. I've got a full article on Biden's statement. And then we're going to move on to Kenosha, because I've got a couple things to talk about over there. Biden on LA, cops being shot. Violence of any kind is wrong, from Hank Berrien. On Sunday morning, following the cold-blooded ambush in which 2 Los Angeles sheriff's deputies were shot in the head as they sat in their patrol car, Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden studiously avoided ascribing the brutal act to the possible mentality of the viewing of the police as systemically racist, a charge he made specifically at least once. Instead, Biden tweeted, "Violence of any kind is wrong. Those who commit it should be caught and punished." I hate to say this, you guys, but Biden didn't tweet that. Some low-level staffer who got paid to say, "Oh, how can I spin this in the best possible way for Joe Biden?" And I know this happened because I actually know a social media director for a campaign personally. You guys get to watch her every week. Well, most weeks. She will be out this week because of a meeting that she's going to have during the Red Net show, but I've got a great returning guest from Ed's World coming in and helping out instead. But yeah, almost every other week that you guys are here, you get to see a social media director. With this in mind, with this tweet, I do wish that she didn't have a meeting tonight because I would love to ask her about the process of getting tweets like this out. But that's what we have here. Biden has said, or has not been reticent rather, to call the police systemically racist. In June, CBS News' Nora O'Donnell asked him, "Do you believe there's systemic racism in law enforcement?" "Absolutely," Biden responded. "But it's not just law enforcement, it's across the board, and it's housing and education, it's hairy legs, and it's everything we do. It's real, it's genuine, it's serious, and it is to be dealt with. Look, Fat, not all law enforcement officers are racist, my lord. And there's some really good cops out there. But the way in which it works right now, we've seen too many examples of it." After the shooting of Jacob Blake in Kenosha, Wisconsin, Biden issued a statement in late August, which he again accused police of systemic racism. I remember reading this one on the show, so we're going to blast by that one. Biden gave a speech on September 3rd in which he once again condemned President Trump for his remarks after the 2017 Charlottesville rally, misrepresenting Trump defending white supremacists. Biden stated, and we haven't read this one yet, so let's go through this one. "And I hadn't planned on running for anything again after my son died. I was a professor at a college and running another program at another college. Until I saw them people coming out of Charlottesville carrying torches. Literally torches. Come out of the field. Close your eyes. Remember what you've seen on television. The veins bulging in their hate-filled speech, chanting the same anti-Semitic bile that was chanted in the streets of Germany in the 30s. On top of that, accompanied by white supremacists, Ku Klux Klan, a young woman was killed protesting those folks. And the President of the United States was asked, 'What do you think?' And he said, something no president's ever said. He said, 'There are very fine people on both sides.' No president has ever said anything like that. The generic point I'm making is it's not all his fault, but legitimizes the dark side of human nature." And it was also not true, former Vice President Biden. Just keep that in mind. And yes, Biden has been stoking the fires that led up to exactly this. He has been stoking exactly what happens, or what happened rather. This is the logical end result. When you stoke the fires like this, when you tell people that all police are out to get you, when you tell one group of people that you will 100% die at a police officer's hands because of the color of your skin, this is what you get, and that's what Biden has been telling people. So that's something to keep in mind as we go into November. I don't think anybody in my audience is going to vote for Biden, but that's what we're going to see if we keep seeing stuff go on like this. Let's keep going here, shifting gears, moving on to Kenosha. Sole survivor of Kenosha protests, shootings, speaks out for the first time. Now, I hinted a little bit on this over on Ed Talk on Saturday, but there's so much more. There's so much more to this one here. From Samira Said and Sarah Sidner over at CNN. And like I said, I love the fact that they put the paramedic hat on this guy. And you know what? Let's listen to this one. Let's not read the article. Let's listen to this one here while I take a breather to get ready to rant.
I walked away with my life that night. 2 people didn't.
Gage Grosskreutz is the only person to survive of the 3 people shot during protests in Kenosha, Wisconsin.
I think about the screams, about the gunshots. I think about everything all the time.
Grosskreutz says he arrived in Kenosha from Milwaukee deeply disturbed by this video of police shooting Jacob Blake in the back and concerned about a call to arms by a local militia on Facebook. The former paramedic says his goal was to provide medical care to anyone who needed it there. When he arrived on August 25th, he had no idea that 17-year-old Kyle Rittenhouse had also arrived from Illinois. He was also vowing to help people and protect businesses. Both had their cell phones. Both carried medical kits. Rittenhouse had a rifle.
Were you also armed?
Absolutely. Like I said, I believe in the right to bear arms.
But that night, Rittenhouse used his firearm, while Grosskreutz had to use his medical kit on himself. This is just before the two came face to face. Rittenhouse is running down the street after his first deadly shooting that night. He falls.
What do you do?
He shoots and misses one person. Anthony Huber hits Rittenhouse with a skateboard.
He shot that guy in the stomach.
Huber is shot and killed. 3 seconds later, Grosskreutz goes towards the shooter. He's shot.
I'm missing 90% of my bicep. I'm in constant pain, like excruciating pain that just doesn't go away.
Rittenhouse eventually walks towards police with his hands up, and police pass him by. His attorney says his client acted in self-defense.
The shooter walked away and got to sleep in their bed that night. Some people don't get that luxury.
2 people were taken to the morgue that night, and Grosskreutz was taken to the hospital in a police vehicle.
What on earth got you to a point where you were chasing somebody who had a semi-automatic rifle?
We don't want to compromise the current criminal investigation against the shooter at this point in time, and unfortunately going into those details, it might do that.
Prosecutors have charged Rittenhouse with 2 homicides, attempted homicide, and...
All right, where do we begin off of this one? First and foremost, the lawyer says, we don't want to compromise an investigation into the current shooter. No, you don't want to make a statement off of that question, what possessed you to chase down a shooter, because it will completely fucking decimate the prosecution at this point. And the prosecution needs to be decimated to begin with. That was a defensive shot. And anybody who has seen that video, just the one that we saw right there, will tell you that that was a defensive shot. But my God, okay, first and foremost, and to listen to this interview, one thing you will know right away off of this, and this is what I noted right away. Gage Grosskreutz and Kyle Rittenhouse literally did the exact same thing. Well, Gage Grosskreutz was just coming to defend his community. No, he wasn't. He absolutely was not in his community. He is from West Allis. And I know how far West Allis is away from Kenosha because I used to live in Kenosha. And I used to date a girl in West Allis. It is an hour. He drove an hour to come out and be a part of this protest. Yes, well, he had his paramedic hat on. He's a paramedic. He's such a saint. It's said right in the beginning. Right in the beginning of the video. Rittenhouse and Greuskreutz were both administering medical aid to people. They both carried a weapon because they thought that the situation was going to get bad. Rittenhouse, an AR-style rifle that was given to him in the city, and Greuskreutz brought his own, all the way from West Allis. I was just going down there to peacefully protest. Yeah. And this kid was going down there to clean up graffiti and administer medical aid. This is the exact same situation, except that Greuskreutz is walking free for being the aggressor and attempting to kill a minor. And Kyle Rittenhouse is sitting in Lake County Jail awaiting extradition to Kenosha, per the defense. So, no. This is completely... As I said on Saturday, and as I said in the tweet, because I went on a tweet storm about this too, Rittenhouse was complying with his duty to retreat. He was retreating. Greuskreutz was the aggressor in this situation. And yes, I find it wonderful the fact that he had to have his lawyer sitting next to him in this interview, because he could, and especially with the questions that CNN was asking, he could very, very easily implicate himself on this. And it looked like he was close. It looks like CNN was very, very close to probing and figuring out why he was running towards him, why he was the aggressor in this. And once again, could very, very easily implicate himself. Greuskreutz is the aggressor. He needs to be in cuffs and arrested for this. Now, a lot of people have asked, why isn't he in cuffs already? Because he was a felon. And he was a felon in possession of a firearm. That is not confirmed yet at this point. I've not been able to independently confirm that. His lawyer states that he's pending charges for it right now with no conviction, which means that his rights wouldn't have been taken away. And it is a firearms charge. He does have a conviction for a misdemeanor firearms charge as well. So it's gray whether or not he actually should have had the gun that he had. It's very gray in that situation. But no, this is clear cut. He was aggressing, chasing somebody down, and once again, same thing with Huber. That was Darwin Award. If you chase somebody with a rifle down the street, you've played a stupid game and you've won a stupid prize. But that's what I have on that. We'll be talking more about this tonight, so tune in for that. Let's talk about the fires. Wow, we're already almost an hour into this and barely through what I wanted to talk about today. Well, let's keep going, I guess. Oregon wildfire under criminal arson investigation, police say, from Bree Stimson. The case of the deadly Alameda fire in southern Oregon is now under criminal investigation for potential arson, Ashland Police Chief Ty O'Meara reportedly said Thursday. The circumstances surrounding the fire are suspicious, O'Meara said, without going into detail, because YouTube, Twitter, Facebook will shut you down if you try and say that this was any sort of arson. Authorities in the state have cautioned against rumors that wildfires may have been set by political activists, Reuters reported. The fire sparked in Ashland Tuesday, although it mostly spared the Oregon Shakespeare Festival town. The blaze has destroyed hundreds of homes in surrounding communities. We have good reason to believe that there was a human element to it, O'Meara said, according to Reuters. We're going to pursue it as a criminal investigation until we have reason to believe it was otherwise. Investigators are also looking into a body that was found near the origin of the fire as part of the criminal investigation. KDRV-TV in Medford reported officials have not elaborated. The fire has killed at least 2 people, and a death toll is expected to rise. A spokesman for the state's fire marshal's office stressed that the authorities don't know at any point if the state's wildfires were a result of arson. Every fire is investigated for the possibility of arson so that we can either determine it is or rule it out. Rich Tyler said, Reuters reported. 2 people, a 12-year-old boy and his grandmother, died while attempting to escape another wildfire about 250 miles further north. So yes, the entire West Coast is on fire at this point. And, I mean, the gender reveal party, I think, was a very convenient scapegoat for what's happening in California. Oregon, I don't want to say, because we transmit to YouTube. It's possible, but I don't want to say. And there's still some investigations to this. And there's some other side. I mean, I didn't even know about most of the Oregon, because I kind of took a little bit of a social media break after Ed Talk on Saturday. And just walked away from it for a little while. So I don't know a lot of the details about this. I know a lot of people have been talking about it. Apparently Tim Pool was talking about it over on his show, and I haven't listened to that, because I'll usually listen to the audio of those. They mentioned it over on Beauty and the Beta last night, and that was me coming back into the social media fold last night. Was when I started listening to Beauty and the Beta. So there's a bunch of stuff going on with this. We don't know what started this, where this came from, and yes, there may be a human element to this. So this is something we're going to watch closer to as more details come out, and Facebook and Twitter stop shutting people down for reporting the truth off of this. Then we'll probably talk a bit more about this, and I've got another one here from ABC News. Going right along the same line, Oregon replaces its state fire marshal. Wildfire death tolls grow to 22 on West Coast. From Mark Osborne and John Hayworth. Oregon went into a surprising step of replacing its state fire marshal as devastating wildfires continue to spread across the West Coast on Saturday. Mariana Ruiz Temple was thrust into the role of Oregon State Fire Marshal after Jim Walker was placed on administrative leave for unspecified reasons, according to Oregon State Police Superintendent Travis Hampton, who made the appointment. Walker submitted his resignation after being placed on leave, Portland ABC affiliate KATU reported. While no reason for the switch was given, Ruiz Temple immediately steps into historic fire season. More than 1 million acres have already burned across Oregon, and deaths from the recent spate of fires crossed into double digits on Saturday. Mariana is assuming this position as Oregon is in an unprecedented crisis which demands an urgent response, Hampton said in a statement. This response and the circumstances necessitated a leadership change. I have the absolute confidence in Mariana to lead OSFM operations through this critical time. She attested, trusted, and respected, having the rare combination of technical aptitude in the field, operations, and administration. The Jackson County Sheriff's Office reported Saturday afternoon that 3 more bodies had been found among the rubble from the Alameda fire, bringing the total number of deaths attributed there to 5. A 41-year-old homeless man was arrested on Friday for setting one of the 2 fires that merged into the Alameda fire. The fire has delivered unprecedented destruction to the communities of Medford, Phoenix, Talent, and Ashland. I'm totally overwhelmed at the enormity of this disaster. It must be horribly difficult to lose everything, as happened to thousands of people. I want to do all we can to help, Ashland Mayor John Stromberg wrote in a letter to the residents. The road to recovery is going to be long. This is an ultra-marathon, and though many want to start out sprinting, we can't sustain it. So we have to pace ourselves in order to rebuild lives, homes, and businesses with care and compassion. 10 people have been killed in the recent Oregon wildfires in total. 4 of those deaths, including a 13-year-old boy and his grandmother, came in the Beachy Creek fire, which grew to more than 186,000 acres on Saturday. More than 30,000 structures, including tens of thousands of homes, are under either Level 2 or 3 evacuation orders due to the fire level. Level 2 orders indicate people should be prepared to leave at a moment's notice, while Level 3 evacuation zones should be leaving immediately. Come inland, people. Leave your voting behind and come inland. It's time. They're going to burn your state to the ground. Everything you work for. Just leave the shit behind. It's time. Leave your voting behind. Leave your elected officials behind to clean up the mess that you're leaving behind. And come on inland. Come on. No. Start a business. Employ people. Just, like I said, leave that voting pattern behind, because you're seeing what it's doing to your homes and your communities right now. California, Oregon, Washington. They're all in ruins right now, between the protests and the fires and the chop zone. people getting shot. Why would you ever want to live there again? Your police chiefs are resigning left and right. They can't stay. And we're seeing that over on the East Coast too. How do you still want to be there? I don't understand. All right, let's keep going here from back in Kenosha. We're going to hit a 90-minute show today, maybe. I'm going to try not to. I'm also going to shut the autoplay down because nobody cares about keeping up with the Kardashians. Sorry about that. Stop playing. Damage blamed on rioting in Kenosha tops $50 million. County asks for federal help to rebuild, from Louis Cassiano. The unrest that gripped Kenosha, Wisconsin for several days following the police shooting of a black man last month resulted in $50 million in damage to buildings and businesses, officials said. To help put the perspective on just how big of a hit that is for the city with a population of nearly 100,000 residents, that makes up more than half of Kenosha's municipal budget of $86.3 million. The damage was spread across as many as 100 businesses, including 40 that are out of business for good. Kenosha County Supervisor Terry Rose said during a Tuesday county board meeting, according to the Kenosha News. Good. Get out of that county. Get out of that city. Get out of that county. Officially. And this is my home that I'm saying this about, but get out of that city and get out of that county. Good. Go start a business with your insurance money somewhere else. Because these people do not have your back. They do not have your best interest at heart. Rose called for federal and state funding to rebuild businesses and rebuild the State Correction Center, or a probation and parole building that was set ablaze during the riots. Yeah, that is. We actually went down when I was taking the pictures and saw that from the ground. This is to let you know, and I know exactly where this is. This is where the fire truck, where my cursor is right now. I don't know if you can see that. Where the fire trucks were sitting and putting out the fire when I did the second video. This is not from downtown, this is from uptown. So that's the building where we went in and we saw like the T-Mobile store, the US Cellular store that were burnt in. That is the building that was next to it there. And then when we came up around the corner, that's where the locksmith shop was. That was all boarded up. And then coming around the corner, those are the other two buildings that we went down and saw burnt up when I said that guy in the Dodge drove by and said, look at all that justice. That's right there. That's where that is, for those of you who are not familiar with Kenosha, as I am. And then, yes, I went along up this street here and looked at the back of this uptown building center. So, yeah, this is the aerial shot of those same buildings burnt out. And it looks like, yes, as I mentioned on the video, this building here, the next one over, is unusable. And this one probably is too. This one over on the corner. The county needs to assist the city in bolstering the uptown community, Rose said. We need to seek federal funds, state funds, or local funds to make sure those police body cameras, which we authorized in a prior resolution, are made very much a part of the forthcoming budget. Kenosha briefly became a flashpoint in the nationwide unrest over the August 23rd police shooting of Jacob Blake. The 27-year-old was paralyzed after being shot multiple times in the back by police officer Rustin Chesky. The incident set off a wave of protests, some of which turned violent. 2 protesters were fatally shot and another wounded by Kyle Rittenhouse, a teenager who was armed with a rifle and claimed to be protecting businesses from looters when he allegedly opened fire on the demonstrators. At one point, 2,000 members of the National Guard were deployed to the city to quell the violence. Yep, that's the parole building right there. And once again, we saw that from the ground because I was standing approximately down here where my cursor is when that happened. But yeah, that's what it looks like from the air as well. And yes, they're going to put these photos out here to try and get people to open up their hearts and their wallets and get the federal government involved. Now, I actually do want to take some time and set up some private charity and do a long-term live stream to assist in Kenosha. I'm going to try and pull something together for this weekend to do that. So the people that live there can start rebuilding their homes or get some money in together to get the hell out of there, one of the two. I don't think, and this comes at a very, very weird place for me. This is my home, and a part of me wants to see it rebuilt. But honestly, no. Don't, from the federal government, don't send them a goddamn red cent. And I'm going to tell you why you shouldn't send them a goddamn red cent. Governor Evers, first off, jumped out to conclusions and says, oh, well, we don't have all the details, but all cops are bad. So this was automatically an issue of a cop that was acting like a racist. So no, we don't know the details, but let's burn the city down because, let's make sure that the cops know that they're not welcome here. That was the statement that Evers put out. And he and the mayor both said, at first, no, fuck the National Guard. We're going to take care of this ourselves. We don't need any help from this. And then they told the president, who wanted to come down and assess the damage, don't come into this town because you're going to inflame racial tensions. Fuck you both. FEMA should not give 1 red cent to Kenosha, 1 penny to the city, because they made their own bed. If they want to pull some funds, let Evers open up his fucking wallet and his budget. Because, honestly, he was at the start of this. He was at the top of this. He could have easily come out and said, don't do your rioting. And I mean, they would have rioted anyway, but he could have quelled a lot of the situation by saying, well, let's figure out what the facts are before we go into riot mode. If you want to go out and protest, let's at least figure out what the facts are. And then the facts came out later. And they were not kind to Jacob Blake when they came out. So no, FEMA has no business giving any money to this. They've already invested time and money in putting 2,000 National Guard troops in there to quell the rioting. They don't need to give 1 more red penny to this situation. Not 1. Now, once again, if you want to do private charity to help with the rebuilding, then yes, let's set up private charity. And I do want to set up private charity to do that. But no, not 1 red cent to any of this. That's what I have to say on that. Let's keep going here. So Paul Krugman, and we'll go real briefly on this because we're already over the hour mark. We already lost Instagram. Paul Krugman had quite the take on 9/11. So it's 9/11. Hard to remember now how large the terrorist attack loomed in our national psyche. After all, in death toll, COVID-19 is already the equivalent of 60 9/11s. But a few thoughts and recollections. Overall, Americans took 9/11 pretty calmly. Notably, there wasn't a mass outbreak of anti-Muslim sentiment and violence, which could all too easily have happened. And while George W. Bush was a terrible president, fact check true, to his credit, he tried to calm prejudice, not feed it. Daily behavior wasn't drastically different. True, for a while people were afraid to fly. My wife and I took a lovely trip to the U.S. Virgin Islands a couple of months later because airfares and hotel rooms were so cheap, but life returned to normal fairly fast. On the other hand, I groan whenever I see some pundit describing the aftermath as time of national unity. On the contrary, Republicans began exploiting the atrocity almost immediately, trying to use it to cut capital gains taxes within 48 hours. And of course, the Bush team used 9/11 to take us into an unrelated and disastrous war. That is also fact-check true. It's actually remarkable how many of the media-promoted heroes of 9/11 ended up revealed as horrible people. Remember Bernie Kerik? And will Giuliani ever get off my TV screen? Giuliani did great in that situation, so fuck you. Almost 2 decades on, it's now clear that the real threat to America comes not from foreign terrorists, but from homegrown white supremacists. But you know what? That was true even in 2001. No. And that's the worst part of this. You are comparing a deliberate, violent attack against structure in our on our soil to a disease. But first off, you cannot fact check that the death toll was the same. First and foremost, I need a fact check on that because I think that is bullshit false. But this disgusting take that now everything has to revolve around COVID and fuck 9/11. Fuck you, Krugman. That's what I have to say on that one here. Let's keep going. From the New York Post, Robert Mueller helped Saudi Arabia cover up its role in 9/11 attacks. A suit from Paul Sperry. After a lengthy investigation, Special Counsel Robert Mueller charged Russia made multiple systematic efforts to interfere in our election and said the incursion deserves the attention of every American. But former FBI investigators say their old boss didn't feel the same concern when they uncovered multiple systemic efforts by the Saudi government to assist hijackers in the lead up to the 9/11 attacks. A far more consequential, to say nothing of deadly foreign influence operation on America. As the head of the FBI at the time, they say Mueller was not nearly as interested in investigating that espionage conspiracy, which also involved foreign intelligence officers. Far from it. The record shows he covered up evidence pointing back to the Saudi embassy in Riyadh, and may have even misled Congress about what he knew. 9/11 victims agree he was the master when it came to covering up the kingdom's role in 9/11, said survivor Sharon Promoli, who was pulled from the rubble of the World Trade Center 18 years ago. In October of 2001, Mueller shut down the government's investigation after only 3 weeks and then took part in the Bush administration's campaign to block, obfuscate, and generally stop anything about Saudi Arabia from being released. Added Promoli, now a plaintiff in the 9/11 lawsuit against Saudi Arabia. In fact, Mueller threw up roadblocks in the path of his own investigators working the 9/11 case, while making it easier for Saudi suspects to escape questioning, multiple case agents told me. He then deep-sixed what evidence he and his agents did manage to uncover, according to the 9/11 lawsuit against the Saudis. Time and again, agents were called off from pursuing leads back to the kingdom's embassy in Washington, as well as its consulate in Los Angeles, where former FBI agent Stephen Moore headed the 9/11 task force, looking into local contacts made by 2 of the 15 Saudi hijackers. Moore testified in an affidavit for the 9/11 lawsuit. He concluded that diplomatic and intelligence personnel of Saudi Arabia knowingly provided material support to the 2 hijackers and facilitated the 9/11 plot, yet he and his team were not allowed to interview them, according to the suit. In Washington, former FBI agent John Guandolo, who worked the terror cases out of the Bureau's D.C. office, said then Saudi Ambassador Prince Bandar should have been treated as a terrorist suspect for giving money to a woman who funded 2 of the 9/11 hijackers, but he was never questioned either, Guandolo said. And there is a big list of things that Mueller himself did to obstruct the investigation into Saudi Arabia. And that's something that's very interesting that we actually should have looked at coming into 9/11. There's a lot of stuff going on here. Honestly, if any of this is true, if any of this is backed in reality, which it appears that some of it should be, then the entire Mueller investigation just needs to be thrown out. Because it obviously can have no basis in reality. So, yeah, this is something to definitely think about as we go on now 19 years later. It was an interesting article, an interesting thing to see. All right. From Britt Hume, on COVID relief bill, Pelosi again played hardball with McConnell and got nothing. He ignored her zillion-dollar House bill and brought forth a much smaller one. Senate Dems opted to block it, leaving them with the position that nothing is better than something, some strategy. Yeah, that's something else you need to remember coming into the election. And they are going to use this in the election, by the way. Keep that in mind. Democrats that are hopeful for the Senate are going to use this as an advertisement when they're going against Republican incumbents. Well, we wanted to give you the world on a stick. But the evil Mitch McConnell and all of his accomplices, including my opponent, wanted you to have next to nothing. So vote us in and we will vote you the zillion-dollar stimulus bill that you deserve. You know that it's going to happen. You know full well it's going to happen. And yes, keep in mind when you go to the voting booth that Senate Democrats said nothing is better than something. We're not even going to look at McConnell's bill because we will not give the Americans 1 red cent unless it's our name on the bill. Let's keep going. From the New York Post, Chinese virologist claims she has proof COVID-19 was made in a Wuhan lab. From Natalie Musumeci. A Chinese virologist who has reportedly been in hiding for fear of her safety has stepped out into the public eye again to make the explosive claim that she has the scientific evidence to prove COVID-19 was man-made in a lab in China. Dr. Li Meng Yan, a scientist who says she did some of her earliest research into COVID-19 last year, made the comments Friday during an interview on a British talk show, Loose Women. What a name for a talk show. When asked where the deadly virus that has killed more than 900,000 around the globe has come from, Yan, speaking via video chat from a secret location, replied, "It comes from a lab, in the lab in Wuhan, and the lab is controlled by China's government." She insisted that widespread reports that the virus originated last year from a wet market in Wuhan, China, are a smokescreen. The first thing is the meat market in Wuhan is a smokescreen, and this virus is not from nature, Yan claimed. Yeah, I'm going to stop doing the accent for that because I think that might be taken down as racist. Yan claimed, explaining that she got her intelligence from the CDC in China from local doctors. The virologist has previously accused Beijing of lying about when it learned of the killer bug and engaging in an extensive cover-up of her work. She had said that her former supervisors at the Hong Kong School of Public Health, a reference laboratory for the World Health Organization, silenced her when she sounded an alarm about human-to-human transmission in December last year. In April, Yan reportedly fled Hong Kong and escaped to America to raise awareness about the pandemic. And I don't... Okay. So, if what she's saying is true, and the Chinese government probably wants to shut her up, I'm going to say, if what she's saying is true, then they probably don't want that information getting out. And here's the New York Post giving her picture and her name. Now, I understand some of this comes from credibility aspects, but why would you put her picture and her name on the screen? When a foreign government probably has a vested interest in keeping her quiet. Now she said she's planning to release scientific evidence to prove that the virus was made in a lab inside Wuhan. The genome sequence is like a human fingerprint, she told the talk show. So based on this, you can identify these images. I used the evidence to tell people why this has come from the lab in China, why they're the only ones who made it. Yan added, anyone, even if you have no biology knowledge, you can read it, and you can check and identify and verify by yourself. This is the critical thing to know for us to know the origin of the virus, she said. If we cannot overcome it, it will be life-threatening for everyone. Now, this virus didn't do crap as much as we thought it was going to. It came from China, so keep that in mind. It was made in China, so it's of a substandard quality. Barely anybody has died from this. When you put this in percentage points, not like what we were seeing. We were thinking 2 million people in the U.S. alone were going to pass from this. Possibly 1 billion people worldwide. And we haven't seen numbers like that. For the most of us, we get it, and we get the sniffles for a little while, and we move on with life. That's how most of us deal with this. But the allegations that are put forward here also don't come out and say that this was a bioweapon that was deployed in order to take out a large swath of the world population. Do keep that in mind. She's just saying it was man-made. She's not saying that it was man-made to kill people, just that it was man-made. So this is possibly not as damning as people think that this article is, but still the fact that it's man-made is going to raise a lot of questions as to why they were making a virus that people initially thought were going to take 2 billion people out of the world population. So keep all of that in mind as we go along here. All right, I just got a few more that we can probably quick hit through, because I think these are going to be quick hitters, and then we will do something that restores my faith in humanity and get on out of here. So, from the Daily Wire, Colin Kaepernick blasts newly woke NFL on opening day, calls the league's social justice focus propaganda, from Emily Zanotti. Former San Francisco 49ers quarterback Colin Kaepernick blasted the National Football League on the league's opening Sunday, calling the NFL's new social justice-focused program propaganda, because Eric Reid, one of the first players to support Kaepernick's anti-racism kneeling protest, remains unsigned after being let go by the Carolina Panthers in March. The NFL announced earlier this year that in the wake of massive anti-racism and anti-police brutality protests that took place in nearly every major city, following the death of George Floyd, who died in the custody of the Minneapolis Police Department, they would set a weekly social justice priority, which is the reason that I didn't watch them this past week, or will not. I'm not planning to watch them any week for the entire football season. Embrace Black Lives Matter slogans and encourage its players to take part in demonstrations, service projects, and social justice-focused initiatives. The NFL also committed to playing Lift Every Voice, the Black National Anthem, before some games during opening week. None of that matters, Kaepernick said on Sunday, if Reid, his former teammate and vocal supporter, remains blacklisted. While the NFL runs propaganda about how they care about Black lives, they're still actively blackballing Eric Reid for fighting against the black community. Eric set 2 franchise records last year and is one of the best defensive players in the league, Kaepernick tweeted, just as many of the NFL Sunday games were kicking off. He played and started 16 games for the Carolina Panthers last season. He recorded 130 tackles and 4 sacks. He joined the Panthers a few weeks into the 2018 season. He recorded 71 tackles and an interception in that season. It's really not that impressive for numbers, I'm sorry. Reid was the first player to take part in Kaepernick's kneeling protest, and when Kaepernick remained unsigned following his decision to turn down a 1-year extension with the 49ers, he co-signed a grievance against the NFL, claiming that Kaepernick and the players who supported his social justice efforts were being blacklisted from the league. Kaepernick claimed that the owners were conspiring with each other, and even allegedly with President Trump, of course, to lock him out of playing again in the NFL. The pair eventually settled, and Reid went on to play for the Panthers, but Kaepernick went unsigned. He has now been out of the league since 2017 season, and despite efforts on the part of the NFL, Commissioner Roger Goodell remains out of the league. I would love to see him in the NFL, and I know there's tons of fans who would love to see him in the NFL, but where Colin sits right now in America is where he's playing football or not. He started a conversation on a national level, Goodell said in an interview last week, and that right there, that is the reason that Goodell doesn't need my fucking views. That right there. See it? Right there. He did say, however, that Kaepernick isn't currently part of the conversation from within the league. Reid told Deadspin last week that there's been some interest. My agents have been in communications with Team Daily, but there have been no developments. So, they linked arms. They kneeled. They put BLM slogans on the field. And it's still not enough for Colin Kaepernick. I love it. I love it. If I would have known that I would have had this much more time to do shit on Sunday, I would have quit watching the NFL a long time ago. And you are not going to be getting some of these viewers back. I hope NFL, you realize this. You're not going to be getting some of these viewers back. It's just not going to happen. It is 100% not going to happen. Because people are going to get out and realize what they can do on a Sunday when they're not enslaved to your agenda. You're not getting some of these viewers back. All right. That's what I have off of this one here. Let's keep going. The flip side of Trump's eviction ban, landlords face a big crunch. And going to go just briefly on this one, because we're going to talk extensively about this tonight when I rehost Kevin Castor from Silent Caster. From Katie O'Donnell, the White House's move to ban evictions across the country during the coronavirus crisis is having an unintended side effect. It's threatening the livelihood of millions of landlords. The sweeping order effectively requires landlords to subsidize distressed tenants' housing through the end of the year or face criminal penalties and hefty fines. That's a tall order for the country's 8 million independent landlords, most of whom lease a unit here or there on property they own without the financial backing of professional management companies. Everyone wants to point a finger and look at the Wall Street types that have invested in real estate, but that's really a fraction of the market, said Bob Pinagar, CEO of the National Apartment Association. Most of the rental housing we have in this country is provided by individuals who are simply running a small business and trying to stay afloat to survive. More than 22 million rental units, a little over half the rental housing in the country, are in single-family buildings with between 1 and 4 units, according to data compiled by the Urban Institute. And most of those buildings have a mortgage, meaning the property owners themselves still need to make their monthly payments. In a 4-unit building, if one person can't pay rent, you've just lost 25% of your income, Pinagar said. It's fucking rich, people. Think about this for a second. In March, we had the protests in Los Angeles, and in Chicago, and in New York. When people started losing their jobs due to COVID-19, when we were actually concerned about this, when people started losing the ability to pay their rent, we had protests saying cancel all rent, cancel it all, publicly subsidize the housing, cancel all rent. Rent is a bastard thing. And even up into last month, people were coming out and saying that rent is a trap, which it is, and landlords are evil, and nobody should own property. And landlords don't. I went on the rant last month about when they said that landlords are evil. And that providing a service isn't like when the one lady said, I pay rent, so I should be a part owner of my. We went over this just last month. And now that it's Trump's eviction ban, now that Trump's name is behind it, that he was the one that did the moratorium by EO, you're hurting the landlords. Oh my God. Dude could cure cancer. And the left right now would come out in favor of Big Pharma. You understand that. He would say Trump is killing Big Pharma. He's killing jobs and he's killing industries. If he cured cancer, if his FDA came out with a cancer cure, the world would say that Trump is killing Big Pharma and killing jobs. This is the point that they're getting at. He could give $1 million to every human being in the country, and they would find some way to flip this and say he was destroying the country. Literally, because it's Trump, now they love landlords again. Do you see what they're doing? All right, I'm not, like I said, not going to spend a lot of time on that one because we're going to go over this one tonight. From CNN, 19 families buy 97 acres of land in Georgia to create a city safe for black people. From Pamela Kirkland over at MSN News. Welcome to freedom, exclaims real estate agent Ashley Scott as she surveys the nearly 97 acres of land that she and a group of 19 black families purchased in August. I'm hoping that it will be a thriving safe haven for people of color, for black families in particular, Scott says. The land sits just east of Macon in rural Wilkinson County, Georgia. Scott and her friend, investor, and entrepreneur Renee Walters didn't initially plan on buying a large plot of land, but they had a vision that was clear to create a safe place for their black families. Being able to create a community that is thriving, that is safe, that has agriculture and commercial businesses that are supporting one another, and that dollars circulating in our community, that is our vision. The unrest took hold of the country earlier this year after the killings of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. No, they had nothing to do with Breonna Taylor because that was already a month old by the time the George Floyd, or 3 months old rather, by the time the George Floyd thing came out. At the hands of police and closer to home, the shooting death of Ahmaud Arbery while jogging outside Brunswick, Georgia, prompting women to search for a new community, one they could start themselves. So, I'm not going to go into extending this article here, but the gist of this article is the fact that a handful of black families purchased about 100 acres just outside of Georgia, and they're going to build a new city. And the premise of the city is going to be no whites allowed. This is going to be a black city where black can be safe from whites. Segregation is back. Segregation is officially back. And they're lauding it and they're praising it. And I love it. I love to see this. Because it just shows that it's not about equality anymore. It's about special treatment. They're not even trying to hide it anymore. Could you imagine? Could you imagine if white people tried to do something like this? What the outrage would be. All right, couple more here. Retailer Lululemon mocked for urging customers to resist capitalism while selling $120 leggings from Emily Zanotti, also over at the Daily Wire. Luxury athleisure brand Lululemon is under fire for suggesting customers and social media followers resist capitalism, participating in a workshop given by one of the brand's top Instagram influencers. The Canadian brand, popular among higher-income American women, mostly sells workout wear and comfortable yet stylish clothing items, regularly priced between $38 for a basic workout tank top and $500 for a style parka. Their best-selling items, though, are likely their leggings, which retail between $88 and $300, depending on style, fabric, and quality. The average price for a pair of Lululemon leggings is around $128, a difficult point for a company pressing for its own customers to unveil historical erasure and resist capitalism, according to an Instagram post on its official account from one of its key affiliates. The brand itself is reportedly $40 billion and rising as Americans increasingly turn to comfortable, daily clothing amidst pandemic-related lockdowns and stay-at-home orders. Lululemon, known for its 128-pound yoga leggings, is facing mockery on social media and promoting an event about decolonizing gender and how to resist capitalism, the BBC reported last week. The event was featured in an Instagram post in which Lululemon recommended other accounts to follow, including the host of the workshop, Rebby Kern. The yoga instructor is a US-based brand ambassador for the firm. So yes, they charge $180 for leggings and they tell you to resist capitalism. And I will take more seriously their calls to resist capitalism when they equally distribute a set of leggings to every man, woman, and child in America on the government dime. But since that is never going to happen, this is just something for us to laugh at. All right, last one here before we do something that restores my faith in humanity. From CNN. 13 mysterious mummies discovered in an Egyptian well. After everything we've seen in this year, now it's going to be mummies. Egypt has uncovered a mysterious collection of coffins thought to contain human mummies that have been sealed inside for more than 2,500 years. The 13 unopened coffins, which were found piled on top of each other in a well nearly 40 feet deep, are so well preserved that the original detailed designs and colors are clearly visible, according to Egypt's Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities. Archaeologists who made the discovery at Saqqara, an ancient site that lies about 20 miles south of Egypt's capital, and is also home to landmarks including the Step Pyramid, believe that the world's oldest are expected to make more discoveries at the site in coming days. In a Twitter post, Khalid El-Aneni, Egypt's Minister of Tourism and Antiquities, said it was an indescribable feeling when you witnessed a new archaeological discovery. The discovery comes just a week after the country reopened its archaeological sites and museums to visitors, following closures in March due to the global coronavirus pandemic. Tourism is vital to the economy in Egypt, which welcomed more than 13.6 million visitors in 2019. More than 1 million people work in the sector. The latest ancient find follows the unearthing of other coffins at Saqqara earlier this year. In April, archaeologists unearthed 4 caskets containing mummies, along with 5 limestone sarcophagi in a burial shaft. So, in April, you discovered 4 coffins, and now you unsealed them, and now we have famine, plague, pestilence, which was brief, but we still had the murder hornets, and riots in the street, which is war. And you think opening those other 13 is going to be a good idea? Yeah, I'd wait on that just a little while if it was me. I would. All right. So that's what we have here. Yeah, I would definitely wait on that at this point, because this year can't get any worse. All right, last one that we have here today, something that restores my faith in humanity. You wouldn't think this would be something that would restore my faith in humanity, but it really is. So, from the Associated Press, Chiefs, Texans boo as racial justice stands sparks outrage from Heather Hollingsworth. The NFL's new stance on encouraging players to take a stand against racial injustice got its first test, as some fans of the Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs booed during a moment of silence to promote the cause, touching off a fresh debate on how players should use their voice. The controversy erupted Thursday night, just moments before the league's 101st season kicked off. After the Houston Texans remained in their locker room during the national anthem, fans booed them widely when they emerged from the tunnel at the conclusion. The booing continued as the two teams walked to midfield and shook hands with their interlocked arms stretched from one end zone to the other during what was supposed to be a moment of silence. Fans, politicians, and players all weighed in on social media and in interviews. Kansas City Councilman Eric Bunch described what happened in a tweet as embarrassing. Some NFL fans booing the players for standing and locking arms in a moment of silent unity provides that for them, standing for the flag, which was always about perpetuating white supremacy, said Bunch, who is white. And this right here is why I don't watch the NFL anymore. And this is why they don't need my money anymore. And this is why this restores my faith in humanity. People don't want a political lecture. Even as politicized as our country has got over the past year, especially over the past probably 12 years, mostly, but especially over the past year, as politicized as we've got, as much as we inject politics in everything, people don't want a political lecture while they're going to a football game, while they've paid hundreds of dollars to go sit in a mostly empty stadium where everyone is afraid of the coronavirus. People don't want this political lecture. I don't care what Aaron Rodgers' politics are. And the backlash is showing. The NFL has a choice to make right now. They can either get the politics out of the NFL completely, or watch their numbers dwindle to nothing as they alienate more and more fans. Because the people who are forcing the issue are largely not the ones who watch football. The people who are forcing the issues are the skinny little Antifa kids who hate sports because, except for soccer, because it's so European and America is so bad and everything that comes out of America is so bad. You are alienating the fan base of patriotic Americans for a sport that is uniquely American. There's nothing else. There's the game in London, and Canada has a football league. But for the most part, this style of football is an American creation and largely only played in this country. And you want to be anti-American and wonder what's going to happen, why people are booing for you, why they're not going to spend their money on your overpriced merchandise, your overpriced tickets, your overpriced food. I've been to a Packers game. It was one of the best experiences of my life. But it cost a bunch of money. So if they're going to continue to lecture to me, I don't want to spend that money. I want to spend the money and go stand in the stands in sub-zero weather while a red-haired idiot is 10 stands down below me in a pair of overalls and nothing else, waving his arms and trying to get the crowd pumped up for what's happening on the field. I don't want to stand there and be lectured about what's happening in the streets, because it comes to me from literally every other angle of my life. And the fact that the fans are rejecting this, that they just want to go on with their lives, that is what restores my faith in humanity. So good. Let Goodell see what this is going to do to his league. Let this empty out his pockets, and good on the people for wanting to have a break and wanting to try and make it so we actually have a break from this insane political cycle that we're sitting at right now. And that is going to be it, which is good because it appears that the crows have all shown up right now as I'm going off the air. So we will be back here later on tonight hosting the wonderful Kevin Castor, because Elaine is going to have a meeting at about the time that we're going on live. So be sure to join us for that. We'll be talking a little bit more about this Politico article and what happened there and what this means for business going forward. We've got a full slate of other things to talk about. Possibly the shooting. We'll go ahead and put that up on the stack. I'll add that now, and these wildfires as well, plus a whole bunch of other stuff that happened throughout the week. We hope to see you tonight, but if not, I will definitely be back here tomorrow with more Contemporary. Until then, I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.